Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to my artwork for my drama Obadiah. You're about to hear a vintage 1994 recording of me doing this character and telling this story. It's about an hour long, and it's very intense, and I hope that it really touches your life.
Oh, folks always be asking me where it all got to going back there. I'll never forget it, as long as I live. It was real early one morning, and at the time I was a blacksmith in Jerusalem. And real early that morning I was just snoozing away. And all of a sudden, I hear this boom, boom, boom all over my door. And when I go up to the door, there they was, standing there looking tough. Them Roman soldiers. And they said to me, they said,
"Obadiah, we need you to make us some nails. And we need some about so big and some about so big. And we'd like for you to deliver them out to Golgotha for us."
I said, no. My chickens, they still snoozing away over here. And you want me to get up and make you some nails and then to tow them out to Golgotha for you. Well, I done it. And sure enough, after I made them nails and I started up that road to Golgotha, I could tell there was something wicked in the air. I know there's something going on. Because this is like even like the birds. They wasn't saying nothing. They were just being real quiet. Oh, and I never been up there, but I know what they do. That's where they go when they're gonna kill folks. And sure enough, I see they just hundreds of folks making their way to Golgotha. They're gonna get their entertainment. But when I get up there to the hill, I can see they all gather around. And right smack in the middle of them Roman soldiers that come to my door too early. And I see they got some fella, and they just are wailing on him. They just are beating him, and they knocked him to the ground. And when the fella fall down, I could see he got some a long purple robe on. I said, whoo, they done got him a king. He done something terrible, and they done caught him at it. I know it. And sure enough, the fella was some kind of king. I could hear them. They was calling him king something. And then they'd keep on hitting him. And all of a sudden, one of them, he reached down to the king and he grabbed the fella off the ground where he done knocked him down, and he grabbed him by his beard. And he just ripped him up to his foot. And then he hit him in the face, and then he ripped a big old piece of the man's beard right out his face. And I see the king, he got him a crown. But it wasn't like no crown I never seen. No. They done take up a bunch of thorns, and they wrapped them up, and they just slammed them in his head. And them thorns was poking all in his skin, nearly about in his eyeballs. And I just wonder who this man is. And why are they going to do him some kind of terrible thing like they doing him? Well, I never seen it. I don't want to see none of it. I don't want to look at it. So I was just going to get on out of there. Well, I see them soldiers, and I reached over there to hand them my nails. Soon as I reached out with them nails, I turned around, and that king fella was looking dead at Obadiah. He was making me feel all nervous, like he was looking right on through me or something. what I was going to get. So I just told my foot, I said, come on, let's go. But it's like my foot's like they were just stuck to the ground or something. I said, I wasn't going to get out this thing even if I want to. Well, then all of a sudden, one of them soldiers, he told the king, he said, we got to have that pretty robe you're wearing. And he grabbed that purple robe and he just ripped it off his back. And when he do, I seen they dirty works then. Because I could see where they been just beating him with their whoops, till his back was just tore out of pieces. Looked like his rib bones were just screaming out. Well, then they grabbed him and they threw him down on this big old rough splintery looking cross. And them splinters, they just jabbed all up in his tore up back. And he was just shaking. And then they took one of my nails and they put it over here in his hand. And they said, and he was just shaking. And then they done one on this side. And then they take one of my long nails and they folded up his foot and they just right down through his foot, right into the old cross. And then they grabbed that cross and they slinged it up in the air. And they dropped it down in a hole, and when the bottom of that cross hit the bottom of that hole, you could nearly about hear his body just a rip on my nails. And he was trying to scream out, but he was hurting so bad that there weren't no sound coming out his mouth. And I said, who this man is? Who this man is? And this soldier, he come walking up, and he got this piece of wood, and he was writing some stuff on it. And he got up and he nailed it up over his head. And I seen it. It said, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." I said, no, I know the Jesus. I know the Jesus when I was a young man. I was apprenticed to the blacksmith in Bethlehem back then. And I never forget it. I was working in this old barn out back of this inn, and I forgot some of my tools. And I had to go back and get them that night, and I just would go running right in that old barn. And when I do, there was this little lady in there, a lady named Miss Mary. And she got a fella with her, and they got him up a feeding trough. And right smack in that feeding trough, all wrapped up in some cloth, they got a little old teeny baby. And I asked the lady, Miss Mary, what his name was. She tell me his name was Jesus. Who, there's something about that name right there now, Jesus. Oh, I forget most people's name. Fact is, I forget my name sometime too. But I never forget that Jesus. Now his mama tell me he was the Son of God. She tell me he was going to take away the sins of the world. Now when she tell me he was the Son of God, I just go right over to him and I was eyeballing him real good. Because I figure, see, if he the Son of God like she said that he was, he gonna like glow in the dark or something, But he just a stanky little baby like I ever seen. Son of God. She said the whole world was gonna know about him. She tell me the world was going to be a whole bunch of more better place because of this Jesus being born. Well, then I looked back up there to the cross. At this Jesus hanging here naked, bleeding and dying in front of us. And I said, this has got to be some other Jesus. This can't be my Jesus from the manger. Because my Jesus, he going to save the world from their sins. But this here Jesus, he just going to die. That's it. Well, that's when I heard her. Oh, she was a wailing much louder than the rest of the folks. And here she come through the crowd, got a fella helping her along. Now, she's a much older now, but I know that face. That there's Miss Mary from the manger. And she comes up to that cross, and she looked up there, and she said, my baby, oh, my baby, look what they're doing to my baby. Some inside of me just died that day. Because I know that was true. They done take my Jesus from the manger. And they done nailed him to a cross. And I made them nails myself. Well, my mind says, no, we ain't going to think about that. We're going to think about the manger, because that manger was a good day. I think about
my sweet little Jesus born. We made you be born in that manger. Sweet little holy child, and we didn't know who you was. We didn't know you come to save us, Lord, to take our sins away. Ours was a blood, Lord. We couldn't see, Lord, we didn't know who you was.
Lord, no. If they didn't know who he was, they wouldn't be killing him like that. Now, what was I supposed to do? I'm just a blacksmith, that's it. Well, I know there got to be somebody wicked behind all this. And sure enough, here they come, dragging their long robes behind themselves, looking real righteous. Them old Pharisees and them Sadducees. I know why they call them Sadducees, because I was sad every time I ever did see them coming. But they just walked right up there to the cross like they was somebody. And one of them, he looked up there and he says that, Jesus, what was that you said? You said you were going to tear down the temple. and to build it back on the third day. Well, now, we would most certainly like to see you do that one from up there on that cross. I started to take my stick and just pop him good. But before I could, here come another bigger, dumber one walking up. And he comes right up there and he says that,
well now, Jesus. Oh, ain't it a fine mess you done got yourself into here, Well, you said, I say you said now that you was the Son of God. Well, now, if, and I know it's a big if now, but if you the Son of God, like you said that you was and all like that, you know how you saved all them other folks out there. Well, why don't you just come on down from that cross and save yourself?
I said, look at here now. Here goes two fully grown men standing here. Ain't got half a brain betwixt the two of them. They standing here making a big old fool of themselves right here in front of God and everybody. Well, I learned a whole bunch of stuff that day. And one of the things I learned was, it don't matter what folks be saying about Jesus. He's still Jesus. It don't matter if they believe he's God, he's still God. That's the beautiful thing about truth. If something is the truth, then it ain't affected by my opinion or your opinion or nobody else's opinion about that truth. It is still true. Well, I learned, it don't matter what they say. If you just keep your eyeballs on Jesus, everything's going to be all right. Well, I was doing that. I was watching Jesus. Because I figured, see, he going to have to say something to them boys. Because I know I sure had a little something I wanted to say to them. Well, I was watching him, and all of a sudden, he going to say something. He started to push up on my nails so they could get him a breath. And then he looks up like he knows somebody. I said, no, they down here. Get them good. But he don't do it. No. He looks up and he says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing to me. I said, forgive them? Forgive them? What kind of man is this? What is this Jesus fellow? I can't understand somebody gonna forgive folks for something terrible they done. Oh, I tell you folks, that right there was the longest day of my whole life. I watched him. And I remember in the middle of the day, the sun was shining down real big. And it was like the sun, like she knew who he was. And she said, I ain't gonna look at this no more. And she just shut her eyeballs up. And it was a pitch black in the middle of the day. And when that sky turned to black, Jesus, his body just slammed out against my nails. Looked like somebody just dropped a mountain on him. And he was all pushed out there, and he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? his own mama. His mama tell me he was the Son of God. No. If he the Son of God like she said that he was, well, that means his own daddy left him hanging up there bleeding and dying naked in front of us like that. I couldn't understand none of it. None of it. You know, people, if somebody gets in trouble, somebody might go and they give a little bit of bloods. They go give a little bit of bloods to help somebody. Oh, I want to talk to you about a man who gives some bloods to help somebody. I watched his bloods. His blood was all over him. He was just covered in it. There was so much blood just pouring out his face and from them thorns. And there was just blood just running all out his back and all down on the ground where they tore him up. And I seen the blood of Jesus running out my nail prints and falling to the ground. And there was so much it was just running down around our foot. He didn't just give a little bit of blood. He gave every drop of blood that he had, till he didn't have no more to give. I seen it myself. Oh, I seen the price of the salvation Jesus bought, that people just walk by and spit on today. They just ignore what he done. I can't ignore it. I watched him up there. And I see it as the day go by, he was getting so weak, he don't got no more strength. He can't even push up on my nails to get no more breath. And finally, toward later in the day, them soldiers, they gets all impatient. And they gets a stick and they start to breaking the legs on them fellas on either side of Jesus. So they can't push up and get no more breath. And they was going to get Jesus next. But he wasn't going to have none of that. And he pushed up on my nails one more time. And he said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. It is finished. And he just fell out of limp, just hanging on my nails. And all of a sudden, the earth, she started shaking. She started moaning for him. And then the earth, she just bust open. And she swallowed up a bunch of folks. Got a Pharisee, a couple of Roman soldiers. I didn't mind that much, really. Oh, and I tell you, in my lifetime, I seen a bunch of rain. But what I seen falling from the sky that day, it wasn't rain like I never seen. No. It was some big old teardrops from heaven falling down on King Jesus and washing his blood all down around our foot. And in this Roman soldier, he come to running over, and he slammed his spear in Jesus' side, and blood and water come gushing all out. And then he grabbed my nails and he yanked them out, and he dropped King Jesus right down in the mud like so much dead dog. And that's when I heard her again. Miss Mary from the manger. Oh, she was wailing so loud, so horrible. Nothing like a mommy losing her only love, her firstborn child, her son. And she come falling through the crowd, and she fought in the mud, and she go crawling across through the mud and the blood to get to her baby boy, at least what was left of him. When she gets over to him, she take the hold of them old thorns they sticked in his head, and she was a-pulling and a-pulling, and them thorns was a-jabbing all in her hands, just a-tearing her to pieces. But she don't stop. She finally gets them thing out of his head, and she threw them away. And then she reached down only like a mommy can do, and she take hold of his bloody tore up head. And she pulled it right up into her belly from where he come from. And she was just rocking his head like that, like he was her little baby boy again. And she started to moving them bloods and them bruises around. She was trying to see, could she find just something that looked like her baby boy? But I seen what we done to him that day. And he don't even look like no person. But like a good mommy, she gonna fix it. She gonna try to fix her baby boy. But there wasn't no mommy nowhere gonna fix that. And then she looked up at us. And she looked right at me. And she said, all he ever did was just love you. I seen how we paid him back for his love that day. Well, then the soldier come along and he knocked her out the way, and he grabbed the hold of King Jesus and he started dragging him off like some dead animal. And this fella said, no, sir. You ain't gonna bury him in no pauper's tomb. He's the Son of God. You're gonna bury him in my tomb. A fella named Joseph. And they took Jesus and they toted him off. And there wasn't but one thing going on in my mind. You know, back there when that Pharisee was throwing his mouth on Jesus, talking about it gonna tear down the temple and to build it back on the third day. Well, right behind me, Nicodemus said, no. He ain't talking about no building. He said he's talking about himself. But then Nicodemus said something I ain't never heard before. He said they're gonna tear him down and he gonna die. But then he said, but he ain't gonna stay dead. I said, poof! Ain't gonna stay there now. Nicodemus talking about it gonna rise up. Now I said to myself, Obadiah, we gonna have to see that one for ourselves. And sure enough, I go right down there with them. And I seen it. They laid Jesus off in this old tomb, and then they rolled this big old rock right up in front of the hole. And then here they come, dumber than a stump. Them Roman soldiers. They're gonna stand there and guard that rock. Ooh. I wonder about them boys sometimes. Well, I stayed there till it gets way after dark, and I'm watching that rock, and it don't go nowhere. So I got all tore up, and I just go home. And when I get home, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. All night long, I'm awake thinking about Jesus. Thinking about Miss Mary in the manger. Thinking about he gonna take away the sins of the world. And I'm thinking about he's a dead man. And I'm not understanding none of it. Well, I was awake all night long. And as soon as the sun comes up, I go right back down to that tomb. And there they was. Guarding they rock real good. I said, Nicodemus is a lying dog. Talk about it gonna rise up. He's a good man, he's a dead man, and that's that. And I go home that day. And Then all day long, I still couldn't eat. I still couldn't sleep. All night long, I just couldn't sleep. All I can hear is in my mind, he gonna rise up. He gonna rise up. He gonna rise up. And then real early the next morning, just before the sun come up, I was just about to finally fall off to sleep. And all of a sudden, my little house, it started shaking. And I looks up, and there's this light. Now I'm talking about some kind of rainbow-looking light, some kind of prettiest light I ever seen, and it was shooting right in through my house, and I know it was coming from down to that tomb. So I jumped up and I go running outside, and I said, "Hope you got no clothes on." I go back in, I get some clothes on, and out I go. And when I gets down there, I seen it. That old stone, it done blowed out of there. And them Roman soldiers, they were sprawled out, whining and crying on the ground like a bunch of little girls or something. And they want but one thing I want to know. Where is Jesus? And I started looking all about, and I couldn't find him nowheres. I said, now ain't this a fine how they do? Somebody done come along here and they done stole Jesus. Well, I didn't know what to do. So I go to see my friend Cleopas. I said, Cleopas, what we gonna do here? He said, look at him, why don't we just get on out of here? He said, let's go out of town, let's go to Emmaus. I said, well, I'm about to go crazy anyway, let's go. So we was walking on this road to Emmaus, and we were just a minding our own business, kind of crying and such. And all of a sudden, this fella, he comes walking up. Now, I don't know him from nobody, but I know he's a whole bunch of more nosy. Because he just get right up in our business. And he said, what's the matter? I said, what's the matter? I said, they done killed Jesus, throwed him in a hole, blowed it all up, and they stole him too. He said, but you just don't understand. I said, of course I don't understand. I said, why don't you just clue me in a little bit? Well, I sure did ask for it that time. Because this fella commenced to talking. And I mean, he done a whole bunch of more talking than he did walking too. Because it take us twice as long to get to Emmaus. And he going on, he said, look at him. He said, you got to go way on back there to where it all got to going. He said, when it all started up, he said, God made everything. And he made this earth. And in this earth, he put a garden. And in the garden, he put a tree. And in front of that tree, he made a man and a woman, Adam and Eve. And then he told them, he said, now y'all look around. He said, you got everything you ever gonna need. He said, you don't need nothing else. He said, now I got one rule for you though. He said, you see the fruit on this tree here? He said, now don't you mess with the fruit on this here tree. Because the day you do, you gonna die. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I got that, all right? Don't mess with the tree. So what you figure they gonna do? They gotta mess with the tree. They got one rule, and they got to mess it up. I figured they must have been teenagers or something like that. All right, now y'all watch out. Well, sure enough, he told me, he said, as soon as God said, don't mess with that forbidden fruit, that's all they could think about. And you know how it is, they got them some help, the fella tell me. You know, if it's something you ain't supposed to do, they always somebody gonna come along and try to help you do what you ain't supposed to be doing. And sure enough, they said there was like a serpent, kind of like a dragon looking thing. And he come dragging his ugly self right up there to the tree. And he gonna help them to break the only rule they got. And he tell them, he said, everything he said was just lying like a dog. Everything God said, he lied all about it. And he tell them, he said, oh, I see. So what you trying to say here, you think God said, don't mess with the fruit. Oh, no, he said, you think you're gonna die? He said, you ain't gonna die. He said, thing here is, he said, God knows something, he just don't want you knowing. He said, God got a secret. God got a secret. And they was going crazy to find out what the little secret was. Well, sure enough, the fella tell me one day that they were going to get that fruit. And right at the last second, Adam, he gets all scaredy cat. Because he think if you're going to bite that fruit, you're going to be like splattered all over that garden or something, you know. So he jumped off behind some rocks. And all of a sudden, he turned around to say something to Eve, and he said, ooh, ooh. And he looked up to the tree, and there she was. And the fella said she done take a big old bite of that fruit. And she turned around, and she was grinning so big, she had fruit juice dripping off of both her earlobes. And Adam, he about knocked her down, snatching that fruit out her hand, and he just slammed it in his big old mouth. And the fella tell me, right then, they get some whole lots of more than just fruit juice all over them. He said they got something called sin in them, because they disobeyed God. And he said that sin, it got in their bloods. And he said that sin done been passed down to every person ever gonna be born to the last one coming. He said, even you, Obadiah. I said, I don't like that deal. He said, that don't change nothing. I said, poof. And sure enough, he tell me, he said, right smack dab in the middle of their fruit juice party going on, he said, God come a-walking right up. Ooh, ooh. You know, some things never do change. God, he loved to show up in them fruit juice parties today, too. He the big party pooper. And sure enough, and God walked up, he said, now look what y'all done. He said, y'all done messed this thing up so big, they gonna have to be some blood shed to make a covering for this sin. And sure enough, the fella tell me they killed a little old innocent lamb in the garden that day to make a covering for their sins. And he tell me, he said, Jesus dying upon that cross was the Lamb of God come. And he said up on that cross, he said he died to make a covering for man's sin once and for all. And he tell me, he said, you know, that old dragon, he said that dragon was the devil. And he said when God showed up, the devil, he always got to get. So he tried to scoot on out of there. So God dropped his big old hand on that dragon's tail and he hanged on. While he was talking to Adam and Eve over here, that dragon was steady digging him a hole over here trying to get away. You might call it a pit. And God said, yeah, boy, you keep that up, because that pit there, it's going to come in right handy one day. And he just tending to them, and that dragon was kind of digging way on down there. And God, when he finished with them, he just grabbed that dragon by the tip of the tail, and he said, look at him, boy. He said, one day there's gonna be a dragon slayer come, and he gonna stomp your scaly head. Woo! And the fella tell me, he said Jesus down up on that cross was the dragon slayer come. And up on that cross, he was a stomping and a stomping. And then that dragon bruised his heel and he died. But the fella tell me, he said, but this morning when that tomb blowed up, he said, Jesus the dragon slayer come a walking out alive, I said. And the first thing he done, reached underneath that stone and he pulled that dragon out. And he put a Jesus-sized footprint right upside his scaly head. Woo! I like that part. And that right there is why the devil been crazy ever since. Jesus scrambled his little brain for him real good. Well, that fella, he just keep on talking. And all the way to Emmaus, he going on telling me more and more stories. And everything he said, it was a burning in my heart, because I know that was true. And when we get to Emmaus, the fella, he going to walk off. I said, no, come on, let's go get something to eat. So we go in and we sit down. And the fella, he was sitting here and I was over here. Cleopas was over there. And I get me this big old steamy hot plate of food. And I start to dig right in, you know. And the fella, he wants to pray. Well, I said, all right, you go ahead on. And I was eyeballing him. And he commenced to pray, and that's a big old humongous looking prayer. All about Jesus, Obadiah, sin. Well, about a year later, he says, amen. Woo. Well, I started looking around for a sledgehammer to bust the ice off my frozen food, you know. And all of a sudden, the fella, he reached up on the table and he picks up this piece of bread. Now, I see that it was just regular old bread. And he bust that bread. And soon as he do, the fella turned right into Jesus. I said, I said, Gee! And before I could get the zush out my mouth, Jesus, he just disappeared. And the bread go falling on the table, just a bloop, bloop. I said, oh, no. While I looked at Cleopas, and Cleopas, his eyeballs, they was big as saucers. I could have stick my head in his mouth. Well, we walked around crazy like that for days. Till finally we found out where them fellas was. Them disciples that hanged around with Jesus a bunch. They was hiding out upstairs in this building like a bunch of scaredy cats. And I go up there one night and I see they got their windows and their doors all boarded up, and they just a little bit of light peeking around the edge. So I go up to the door and I done had it, you know. So I said, boom, 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 open up in there. You should have heard them scrambling around like a bunch of rats on a sinking ship or something. But finally though, one of them, he growed him up a backbone. Fella named Peter. And he come to the door, and I said, well, Saint Jesus. Now I figured he was gonna get excited, but he just kind of looking kind of dumb. So I said, we have seen Jesus. Well, all of a sudden, he's going to go into one of them there all too familiar Peter speech. And he says that, my friend,
my confused little Ethiopian friend. It is most obvious to all those here that you do not know who I am. I am Peter, the rock upon which the church shall be built. And if anyone, I say anyone, were going to see Jesus, most assuredly it would be me. Whew. I said, look at here, boy. I said, now I don't know you from Adam's one-eyed house cat, but I do know this. I see Jesus. Well, you know, up until then, I ain't never prayed before. And I figured it sounded like a good time I need to start, you know. So I said, Jesus, look at here, it's Obadiah. These fellas here, I'm gonna need a little bit of help. Cause they just a little bit slow. Now I figured Jesus, he must have known all that. Cause he spent 3 very, very long years with them boys. Well, you know, I found out it don't matter what people believe when you tell them about Jesus. It don't matter whether they agree with you, if they believe you, what I said. If it's the truth, it don't matter what people think about the truth. Well, right over here there was a big old wall. In the darkness, just solid rock, no windows, no doors, just rock. And all of a sudden in the darkness, here comes some light. I'm talking about some of that rainbow looking light. Some of that tomb blowing up kind of light. Some of that Jesus light. And it was just a shining right through them rocks, right on Peter's big old open mouth. Well, I looked at him and I said, here he comes. And sure enough, here comes Jesus, big as life, just a walking right through the wall. Well, I jumped up, I said, boys, whatever you do, don't you give him no bread. Then I scooted over close to him, because I figured, see, if he going to take off this time, Obadiah going to snatch a hold and go for a ride now. But he don't do it. He was making me right nervous, so I figured I'm going to scoot on over and find me a chair somewhere, so I took a step. And when I do, Jesus took a step. I said, Well, I don't look up for 3 or 4 years. And when I do, Jesus looking dead at Obadiah. Whew, he was making me feel all nervous, like he was looking right on through me again. And he said to me, he said, Obadiah. I said, yes, sir. Whew. He said, Obadiah, I know you the one. I know you the one. He said, you the one that made them nails that they drove through my hands and through my foot. Oh, I was sitting there in that chair trying to do that Jesus disappearing thing, but it wasn't working out for me at all. But then he said it. He said, I know you made them nails, but I love you anyway. Oh, that just flew all over me.
I never had nobody tell me that they love me, especially for something terrible that I done. I didn't know what to do, so I just fall down on the floor like a sack of potatoes. And I grabbed a hold of Jesus by the foot, and I was just hanging on to him. And I said, oh, Lord Jesus, oh, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And all of a sudden, I felt this rough, leathery carpenter hand. He reached down and he took the hold of my working man hands. And my finger touched that nail print. And it just shot through me like lightning. 'Cause I know that I done that to him. But I know that he said he loves me anyway. Then all of a sudden, he just dropped right down in the dirty floor with me. And I was face to face with Jesus, eyeball to eyeball with God. And he said to me, he said, Obadiah, he said, you remember when I was hanging on that cross? And he said, when that sky turned to black? He said, you thought a mountain fell on me. He said it was a mountain. He said it was a mountain of sin. He said from up on that cross, when I was hanging there, he said, I looked down through time. He said, I looked all the way back to the garden back there, and I see Adam and Eve. And I see Noah and all those people. And I see Moses, and I see all of history, all the way down through time, all the way to the last one coming. And he said, I seen every sin from up on that cross. He said, I seen every sin that there ever was going to be. All them little things done in darkness, I seen it all. He said, I seen it for how vile and wretched it was. And he said it was so evil that when it come down through time that day, it was coming straight toward me and it blocked out the light of the sun. And he said, I seen all that sin coming straight towards me. And I hung up there and I said, yes! Yes! Yes, I will become sin for them because I love them so much. He who knew no sin became sin for you and for me, so that through him we might become the righteousness of God. That's the Jesus I'm talking about. What have you done with this Jesus? Is he just a religious activity? Is he just some little something you do on Sunday? Young peoples, is Jesus just something your mama and your daddy loves and you tolerate till you get to be old enough to leave and go on your own? Is Jesus real to you? He's so real to me. He is so real to me. He forgave me. He changed me. He's been there with me every day. He'll never leave me. He'll never forsake me. What have you done with this Jesus who is the Christ? What will you do with this Jesus from this day forward and forevermore? I'm not asking you just another little question. I'm telling you, this is the question you need to answer above all questions. What will you do with this Jesus? Oh, hear me well. I'm almost done. Look here. You know what? One day you're going to know what it feels like to see Jesus face to face like I did. You're going to know what it's like to look God in the eyeball. Because the Bible says that every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That's you. That's me. That's that Benny Laden fella too. He gonna fall down one day when he find out Allah ain't the answer to the problem. And he gonna find out his name is Jesus. And all of humanity, from all humanity, is going to call out the name of Jesus with their face down in front of him. But you know what? If you wait to call him Lord then, you waited too long. Because that's going to be the last thing most folks in the whole world are ever going to say before the judgment. And they're going to walk off into darkness, into hellfire, remembering one thing forever. They looked God in the eyeball, and his name was Jesus, and they didn't listen when they had the chance. Will you listen? Because you have a chance right now. What will you do with this Jesus? Because you're going to see him face to face, and it don't matter on that day how good the game's been played. It don't matter how religious you've been. It don't matter how convincing the game has been played, how good the act has been done. On that day, everything going to be exposed